915 going around unstable.
Taxi 915, roger, fly runway heading, maintain 2000.
2000, Mach 915.
Look who's going to the airport. That's right, it's my dad's turn this time, and as you can tell by the name of this video, this is going to be a flight to remember. But who would know it now?
Well, hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm at the Vero Beach Airport like I am very often these days, and like he does very often, he's flying up to the Westchester County Airport today on Breeze.
We're very excited to be here in a cold Vero Beach. It's 55 degrees. It was 45 degrees this morning, but of course that is about 30 degrees warmer than it's going to be up in White Plains today. We're flying at the A220. Of course, have a great seat on the left side as the aircraft as well, which is our preferred location. So have a great flight. We'll see you all back in New York.
All right, so again, this is a flight that he takes very, very often, but every single time we try to make it different. So here's to another Breeze flight.
Unlike my last flight from VRB, this time we have ample pre-flight time, so we spent the time dining at the airport restaurant, CJ Cannon's. Before dining, we waited in the restaurant's lounge, which evokes a bygone era of aviation. Since 1984, this place has been delivering an atmosphere and a Southern-style menu that will fill you up before your Breeze flight for sure.
Here we are at CJ Cannon's restaurant at Vero Beach Airport. This is an old school Southern type restaurant. Eaten here many times prior to our flight. Breeze doesn't offer any food on board that's hot, so just snacks. So we're going to load up on some calories here before we leave this afternoon.
And I, of course, am joining him for lunch today. Well, I've decided to come off airport property because his aircraft is inbound. As a matter of fact, it is right behind me, Moxie 734 from Providence, Rhode Island, directly behind me.
I'm chasing down this airplane. Back at the terminal, there's a lot of activity. The plane has reached the terminal ramp, and the passengers from Providence are deplaning. This airplane is going through the process of turning it around from an arrival to a departure so that my dad can board it for White Plains. And boarding time is right now. He's getting ready to go on that A220. And something a little bit different for this video, I actually have my dad with me right here in the recording studio post-flight, and he's going to narrate the flight with me. Dad, welcome back.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be with you back on your channel. And here we are boarding the aircraft. I always love the outdoor boarding in Vero Beach because you get a great view of the aircraft and the systems outside the aircraft as well. I like it because you can get a close-up view of many things going on in the aircraft. And we're going to be having a very unusual informational session with the pilot pretty soon. Ken is his name. He's super informative about the aircraft and why we're delayed somewhat here in Vero Beach. So we'll look forward to talking about that pretty soon as that next clip comes up.
All right, thanks, Dad. So let's listen into some of the funny things that the pilot said on this aircraft today.
Anyone party a little bit too much and wishing they hadn't partied that much? My name's Ken. I've been doing this for a little while. And it's been successful the whole time.
Thank you, Ken.
What do y'all do? Anyone have a cool job they want to tell us about? Do you have a blog you're doing with the red phone?
No, YouTube channel for my son.
For your son?
So
Okay, what's your son's name?
Peter Masella. I'll show you his card on the way out. So our flight is delayed, and since the pilot Ken saw me with the camera, he invited me up to the cockpit. I love this plane. I love everything about this aircraft. I'm an aviation enthusiast. My son has a YouTube channel.
Oh, okay, cool.
And he does navigation through the sky. To take you off, are you going to make a left turn or a right turn?
I think we're going 3-0, so I think we're going to go this way and take off towards the west, and then we'll turn right.
Well, this is a good delay. At least I enjoy it. Well, true to form, we have another delay on our Breeze flight up to HPN. During the pre-flight walk-around, the co-pilot noticed some debris on one of the leading edge, not the flaps, but the mechanisms that keep the flaps in place. And because of that, that would increase the airflow or decrease the airflow over the wing. So in order to compensate that, they have to take on additional fuel. We're getting fueled up now, and we should be leaving another 10-15 minutes. But again, we're delayed coming out of Vero Beach, which is pretty normal for us. Okay, bye.
Zero ground, Moxie 915 with Kilo, ready to push.
Moxie 915, push back first.
Push back through, Moxie 915.
Okay, Moxie 915 is pushing back onto the ramp. Now, I've got my dad here, and as you saw earlier, some interesting things happened prior to departure, so he's going to elaborate on that a little bit more right now.
Yes, we were delayed, not too long, but somewhat, leaving Vero Beach, due to the fact that the pilot, actually in this case, the co-pilot Dan, when he did his walk around the aircraft to check for any issues, noticed that on the right-hand wing, the flap track fairings, which hold the hydraulic mechanisms that extend the leading edge of the wing itself for aerodynamic reasons, was somewhat damaged. Not damaged in its true sense, but had some debris on it, which would impact the flight of the plane when they'd have to fly a little bit faster to overcome that. And because they went a little bit faster, they had to take on more fuel, in this case 600 pounds of extra jet fuel, in order to overcome that issue of the aerodynamic lift.
Very interesting. It's time for the pilot to check in with ground control for taxi clearance.
Ground Moxie 915, ready to taxi.
Moxie 915, runway 30 left, taxi via Charlie.
Runway 30 left via Charlie, Moxie 915.
Okay, it's pretty much straightforward to get to the runway. The tower is going to come back with another transmission.
Moxie 915.
Go for Moxie 915.
You do Charlie 2, it's less than 500 feet from the end.
Yeah, we got Charlie 2, Moxie 915.
Yeah, I'll work on your release then.
Okay, so he's not going to be using the full length of the runway to take off. Here comes the tower again.
Moxie 915, you can climb to 5,000 for your initial altitude.
All right, 5,000 for the initial Moxie 915.
Okay, so the initial altitude is going to be 5,000 feet, and a little bit less than 500 feet of the runway will not be able to use for departure.
So a few more words about our pilot, Ken, who was super engaging with the crew and with the passengers aboard. He really came out of the cabin and he was talking to us about the delay and kind of joking around. He's a little bit of a kibitzer, trying to make people somewhat feel more comfortable about the delay. I was very impressed with him. He did a good job of explaining why it's going to be delayed, as well as engaging with the aircraft and the passengers aboard the aircraft. You don't see that much anymore. Most of the pilots are just going to give you rudimentary basic information, but Ken did a great job of speaking to and actually kidding around a little bit with the passengers. I really enjoyed him. He was excellent.
All right, and as you can see here, the aircraft is turning to the runway on the taxiway before the very end, as instructed by the tower controller, and then we're going to be waiting for takeoff clearance.
Moxie 915, runway 30 left intersection, Charlie 2, clear for takeoff, fly heading of 300.
2 clear for takeoff, heading 300, Moxie 915.
Okay. This aircraft simply needs to turn left onto the runway and take off. Now, you'll notice that in the conversations that my dad had with the pilot, he asked a specific question about a turn.
Yes, I asked the pilot if they're making a left or a right turn after rolling off the runway. And that was the reason I did that, so Peter would be strategically placed on the ground outside of the airport, so he could get some great video footage of the aircraft in the air.
Yes, so this aircraft today will be taking a water route, which means that once it takes off, it needs to turn around in the opposite direction and fly over the water before heading up to the northeast toward New York City. And the aircraft will either make a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn, and I really wasn't sure which turn would be made. So, of course, I had my dad find out from the pilot after takeoff, will the turn be a right-hand turn or left-hand turn? There really aren't many places to position myself near the runway to watch the aircraft take off, so I went to a spot to the north of the airport, which is the airspace where the right-hand turn would be to film the departure. You'll see that in a moment, but first it's time to be handed off to departure control.
Moxie 915 heading 300, contact Palm Beach departure.
300, switch to Moxie 915.
Palm Beach departure. Gee, I wonder if the air traffic control is from Boston. It's time to check in with departure control.
Palm Beach. Moxie 915, 1000, 5000, runway heading.
Moxie 915, Palm Beach, flight radar contact, climb, maintain 5,000.
5000 Moxie.
Okay, just as prescribed, we are climbing up to 5,000 feet, and now I'm going to put a little box on where you can see my point of view. That's what I'm filming from the north.
Moxie 915, turn right, heading of 050.
Right turn 050, Moxie 915.
I'm so glad my dad told me that he spoke to the pilot and he said that there would be a right turn after takeoff. That puts the plane toward the north, and that's where I'm filming from. From my position, I can see the plane for a long period of time. That's not that easy to do from the airport, and with the delay, it was starting to get late.
Moxie 915, you can continue the right-hand turn, heading of 070, maintain 5,000. Contact Miami Center, 132.25.
070, 5000, 3225, Moxie 915.
Wow, a 70-degree heading toward the east is just perfect. That's going to put the plane really close to me for some great footage. The controller has already handed off the plane to Miami Center's airspace, as the departure controller's control zone has a low ceiling. I wasn't able to hear the pilot, but I heard the Miami Center controller's response.
Moxie 915, Miami Center, climb, maintain 50230.
Dad's airplane is getting closer and closer to me. How was the flight up there?
It was really, really great. We had a great departure from the airport, and I love this A220 with those large windows and these wonderful seats that Breeze has installed.
What a great view of this A220. I love how it says Breeze on the underbelly. This plane is climbing all the way up to 23,000 feet as prescribed by the Miami Center controller. The current heading points the plane right out over the Atlantic Ocean for a water route. Eventually the plane will head further to the north, where it will join the U.S. shoreline around Wilmington, North Carolina. The plane is about to fly over US 1, which runs from Maine to Key West. Down below is the community of Wabasso, which is between Vero Beach and Sebastian. And soon this A220 will be over the Indian River, which hosts the U.S.'s intercoastal waterway system, a common passage for boats to travel on when heading north or south rather than navigate the rougher waters of the Atlantic Ocean. On the other side of the intercoastal waterway is the Barrier Island, and the Wabasso Causeway Bridge connects the mainland to it here. This plane is almost over the Atlantic Ocean and will soon enter the en route phase of flight. We'll resume air traffic control and talking to my dad again in the New York City area. It'll be quite exciting up there, considering there are some strong gusts of wind in New York. It's time for a message from the sponsor of today's video, Exter. Exter wallets come in a variety of shapes and sizes and colors. This one actually glows in the dark. With durable wallets and card holders, the value derived from Exter is unmatched. I always carry an Exter wallet with me, and I know I'll never lose it because I can add an air tag to it. Check out their site. They have lots of awesome products. And as a viewer of this channel, if you enter code Masella at checkout, you'll save. Visit the link in the description below. We're going to move forward to the arrival and landing, and the reason why my dad chose a seat on the left side of the plane. This plane is now flying on the Buono arrival procedure, and since it brings you out over Long Island, there will be New York City airport action visible on the left side of the plane. As this plane heads out over the ocean east of the Jersey Shore, we can see some arrival action to JFK. We're staying above those flights. Heading in our direction is Cathay Pacific Flight 840, an A350 from Hong Kong coming in from the north and being vectored for an approach to runway 31 right at JFK. Behind and a little above it is Delta Flight 1339, an A321 from Orlando coming in from the south and being vectored for runway 31 left at JFK. This airspace was teeming with flights to JFK, as airspace over the Atlantic south of JFK is used to separate flights and assign them to two simultaneous arrival runways. From here we have a great view of Monmouth County, New Jersey, and the lights of Staten Island are on the right side of the screen. We can now see JFK Airport in New York City, and flying in the distance in the opposite direction is American Flight 696, a Boeing 737 from Chicago O'Hare to JFK. Like that Cathay Pacific flight we saw, it's coming in from the north and will use the dark airspace over the water to descend and get vectored to the 31s at JFK. Our position provides a very unique place to see how JFK-bound flights, although very close to JFK, need to fly for longer before they can land. This American flight was high over New York City to make way for flights to and from LaGuardia and Newark, and can only descend further while here over the water. And that's exactly why we are where we are. We are so far to the east that we have no interference with arrivals to JFK. We stay high and away, but have a great view on a great clear night like this one. JFK is using the 3-1s tonight, and that's typical on nights where the wind is strong, and tonight is one of them. LaGuardia, too, is using runway 31 for landing and taking advantage of a full straight-in approach, rather than the more challenging and much more common approach where a turn is made low to the ground. We'll get involved with LaGuardia later. For now, our nose is headed right for Vero Beach on the south shore of Long Island. This will put us right over the final approach course to runways 31 left and 31 right at JFK. The stationary lights that you see in the water are ships and anchor. They're a common sight seen from the South Shore beaches. In this viewpoint, we can clearly see Coney Island on the south side of Brooklyn, and just past it is the Verrazano Narrows Bridge connecting Brooklyn to Staten Island. The barrier island is the Rockaways and Breezy Point. We're getting closer to a good viewpoint of aircraft on the final approach course to JFK. Do keep in mind that it was bumpy when filming this, so the camera may be a little bit shaky at times. Here we can see a China Airlines 777 from Taipei, Taiwan, and a Finnair A330 from Helsinki, Finland, lined up with runway 31 right at JFK. And approaching Long Beach is a Delta A321 from Phoenix, inbound to runway 31 left. At 9,000 feet is a JFK departure. That's JetBlue Flight 2367 from JFK to Santiago de los Caballeros in the Dominican Republic. What a mix of worldwide traffic on this windy night. It's busy because this is the largest city and metropolitan area in the USA, and people are going everywhere. Just look how many lights are down there as we look at Nassau County, followed by Queens in the distance here on Long Island. So many languages and so many people live here, drive on the roads here, and fly out of the many airports. It's so different than that departure from Vero Beach. Tonight is simply a lovely flight to take it all in. If you're ever flying into HPN via an airline from the south, which is where most of the airline flights come from, always pick a seat on the left side of the plane. You will not be disappointed. It's bumpy. If you're looking for good views of Suffolk County out to Montauk, however, choose a seat on the other side, but you won't see the JFK action like this. These views are from 17,000 feet up. We're not terribly far out from our destination, and we need to get down lower soon. In order to do so, we'll need to head out to the east to descend further before turning back to the west over Long Island Sound to land at the Westchester County Airport. But that turn won't happen until we're well into Long Island. Once we head east, we can descend lower. All of this is following the Buono arrival procedure. I love this zoomed-in view. Here you can see in the distance right down the straight streets in Brooklyn and Queens. You can even tell the direction that the traffic is going in, as streets that have darker lights are actually the brake lights of vehicles on the road. Right over JFK Airport is a small scattered cloud. Looking all the way to the west, we can see well into New Jersey beyond the Hudson River, and down below is Jazz Flight 994 from Toronto, heading to LaGuardia on a right base leg to runway 31. As I mentioned earlier, the winds are so strong at LaGuardia that arrivals are lining up many miles out for a straight-in approach. Jazz 994 and Embraer 175 actually came from where we're heading, over Long Island Sound, but arrivals from the south to LaGuardia fly near LaGuardia, then over Long Island's North Shore, then make right turns to runway 31 when the winds are like this. I hope one day to bring that rare approach to this channel. It's almost always the RNAV X-ray runway 31 approach, which is very similar to the old expressway visual runway 31 approach. Moxie 915 has started its turn to the east and is descending further, clear of all that New York City air traffic. We can clearly see the towns of Connecticut's shoreline. Also down there, we can see Northport Bay on Long Island's North Shore. To its right are the Northport Stacks, which make up part of the Northport Power Station, the largest power generation facility on Long Island. This area is just south of Norwalk, Connecticut, but this plane has to continue on for several more miles before making a U-turn around Long Island Sound. It's still part of the Buono arrival. The pilot still has not checked in with New York approach control, but will soon. Time needs to be spent descending further. Just like I've experienced on all of my nighttime Breeze flights, it's hard to film out since there's always a low-level blue light on inside the cabin. It's very, very soothing, but makes videography out the window anything but a breeze. If there was just one thing I'd like Breeze to do is to keep these lights off or dim them even lower. The left turn back circles Port Jefferson down on the north shore of Long Island. Down there, there's a ferry dock for a ferry that provides service across the Sound to Bridgeport, Connecticut on the other side. To drive from here to Bridgeport, you'd have to drive to Queens, go over the Throgs Neck Bridge, then drive up I-95 to Bridgeport. Once we're over the Sound, we can take a look back at Long Island and see that we're not the only one on the Buono arrival. Back there, we can see a Cessna Citation inbound to HPN from Fort Lauderdale doing what we just did. In a moment, it should turn left over the Sound to place it where we are right now. Moxie is descending to 4,000 feet, which is the altitude at which the pilot will check in with New York Approach Control, the TRACON facility, which is located on Long Island, even though this plane will be touching down on the U.S. mainland. Here are a couple of things to keep in mind while you listen into the TRACON. Today, the landing runway will be runway 34, which will call for a right turn to line up with the runway. It's very, very windy. Runway 34 is appropriate for the winds. You'll hear the controller mention that at HPN, a Phenom reported a gain or loss of 20 knots on short final. There are gusts of up to 36 knots at the airport. The approach controller will be fitting one plane ahead of this aircraft, a Global Express 7500 coming in from the Caribbean, which took the Riced 4 arrival route, which starts from the southeast. Because of this, our aircraft here will briefly go over the Connecticut shoreline at Norwalk just to get behind this plane. Then we'll go back over the Sound via a left turn to line up with runway 34 via a right turn. You'll see a very rare view of close arrivals to LaGuardia flying a right traffic pattern to runway 31. A right traffic pattern is made to avoid JFK airspace to the southeast of LaGuardia. As I mentioned, this rare approach is used during high wind conditions. Typically, a low-altitude turning approach is used for runway 31, but not tonight. It's really, really windy out there. Now, as you know from the title of this video, this approach is not going to work out for this flight for the first time, so make sure you watch this to the end. For now, it's time to contact New York Approach Control.
915, 4000.
Moxie 915, Westchester altimeter 2988, advise Zulu. Moxie 915, maintain 180 knots, and then descend and maintain 3000.
This is the first time on this channel for this approach to runway 34, where the aircraft is going to go over Connecticut for a moment. That's Sheffield Island Harbor down there on the south side of Norwalk. Once this plane gets to 180 knots, it can go down by 1,000 feet to 3,000 feet, as just prescribed by the approach controller. It's very important that the approach controller prepare pilots for what's in store for the landing. About 15 minutes ago, a Phenom landed at HPN and reported the conditions to the tower, who then called the TRACON so that the current controller can inform all aircraft on this frequency what the wind conditions are like. Here's that transmission to all aircraft on this frequency.
Intentional aircraft landing white planes, a Phenom reported a gain or loss of 20 knots on short final. That was about 15 minutes ago.
And now that we're spaced properly behind the Global Express, we can now make a left-hand turn back over the Sound to set up for the approach.
Moxie 915, turn left heading 260.
Left turn 260, Moxie 915.
You can see I-95 down there, the road to Bridgeport I talked about earlier. Now the controller is going to talk to an aircraft behind us as well as an aircraft ahead of us.
New York Approach, check 950, 6,200 for 6,000.
Check 950, Westchester altimeter 2987, advise Zulu.
97, we have Zulu,
Check 950, descend and maintain 3000.
Descend and maintain 3,000, check 950.
Motion 756 from Sudney, cross at 2,000 feet, cleared RNAV Yankee, runway 34 approach.
Dit dan nach Yankee 34 approach, 1000 met took me motion 7.
The controller's busy. In this view, we see Connecticut at the bottom and Long Island and New York at the top. That's not too common, but happens when traffic is heavy. The controller is about to give us clearance to Tug Me, which is an approach fix over the Sound at a point just between Huntington Bay and Oyster Bay.
Moxie 915, proceed direct Tug Me to join the approach, descend and maintain 2,000.
Sound to 2,000, direct Tug Me to join the approach, Moxie 915.
In addition to going to Tug Me, we're also cleared to 2,000 feet. After Tug Me, the plane continues 5 miles on a 253-degree heading to a fix called Jet Axe, where it turns right to 340 degrees, which points it right to the runway. At that point, we'll be handed off to the tower, and my dad will be back with me here in the studio to talk about what's going to be an approach full of excitement. As you can hear in the background, the controller is working Westchester flights, but he's also working inbound arrivals to LaGuardia from the north that need to pass through this airspace before being handed off to the LaGuardia final approach controller. In this transmission, a flight from Boston to LaGuardia checks in with the controller here.
Brickyard 5721, information November 8,300 across phase 88.
5721, New York approach, reduced speed 180 knots, LaGuardia altimeter 29905.
29905, speed 180, Brickyard 5721.
Now it's back to a Westchester arrival.
Crypto 505, descend and maintain 3000, flighting 300.
As we look at the Northport stacks in Long Island from a lower altitude, the controller is now going to clear us for the approach to runway 34.
Moxie 915, 6 miles from Tug Me, cross at 2,000 feet, cleared on Ave Yankee, runway 34 approach.
All right, cross Tug Me at 2,000, cleared for RNAV Yankee 34 approach, Moxie 915.
We're now cleared for the approach to runway 34, and we'll turn when we get to the appropriate points. There will be periods of shakiness, but I'm fully sure you understand why. This is an exciting moment, and trying to film it and take it all in at the same time is a lot. The plane is simply going to turn to the right in what's a very, very tight corridor this evening. Typically, LaGuardia arrivals are pretty far away, or if they're coming from the north, they're above Westchester's airspace at 4,000 feet, but today's a special day, and we're on the lookout for LaGuardia arrivals. Nearly all planes will pass especially close to this area, and right now there's another flight from Boston, JetBlue 931, an Embraer 190 that's coming in from the north that will pass right outside of us. Dad's getting the camera ready to film it. JetBlue 931 is being vectored as a minority into the majority of arrivals following each other from the south. It's a balancing act for sure for the controller. JetBlue 931 is flying a parallel path to us to join the mix to LaGuardia. Once over Nassau and Queens, it will make a right-hand turn to get to runway 31, and soon we'll be making a right-hand turn, diverging away from that aircraft by turning to the right. We'll see another arrival to LaGuardia from the south on the majority's path soon, but for us, the time has come to leave the approach control frequency as we're on the approach and are ready to check in with the control tower at the airport itself. The goal is to get landing clearance and to land. Will that happen? Well, here comes the command to switch.
Moxie 915, contact Westchester Tower, 118.57, good night.
1827, Moxie 915.
Okay, let's check in with Westchester Tower.
Westchester Tower, Moxie 915 on
Moxie 915, Westchester, gains losses of 1520 knots reported on final, with the worst of it being at below 500 feet. Wind is tree 20 at 19er, gust tree 6, runway tree 4, clear the line.
Clear 34, Moxie 915.
That's a lot of information, but that aircraft right over there is American 1722. That is a flight from Charlotte to LaGuardia on a right downwind leg to runway 31. You know it's windy at LaGuardia when they're going to be flying a straightened approach, but let's get back to this particular flight right now. I've got my dad with me, and we're going to talk about this approach to runway 34 at Westchester as we look at Manhattan in the distance.
As you can see from my shaking camera, there was a very, very bumpy approach. I had a great amount of difficulty keeping that camera steady. I understood at that point that we were going to have a pretty interesting landing with the wind being plus or minus 20 knots on the approach course, and the worst of it was at 500 feet, and also gusts to 36 miles per hour.
Yeah, it is.
That means it's going to be a challenging landing, and this is when you want your pilot and co-pilot to be on the top of their game.
Absolutely, and while we're looking at it, look at those flights coming to LaGuardia on the downwind leg to runway 31. A lot going on there. But let's take a moment now to listen in to another aircraft check-in with the tower here at Westchester Airport.
Tower, good to 505, on the RNAV Yankee 34. So 505 Westchester Tower, gains a losses up to 15220 knots, reported on final, with the worst of it being at below 500 feet. Wind is tree 10 at 19er, gust tree 1. Continue on approach, traffic may hold in position. Continue, clear, good to 505. Moxie 915, you can cancel your landing clearance. Continue on approach, traffic will hold in position.
Alright, continue, Moxie 915.
So your flight actually got a cancellation of landing clearance at this point, and I was listening to this in real time as you were coming in, and my first thought was, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. But the reason why they canceled your landing clearance is because the tower is actually going to try to get a departure out prior to your landing. So as you can see right from here, we just flew over the sound, and we are approaching the shoreline. Right down below is Rye, New York, Rye Playland area, and in the distance is all of Westchester County. So what's the approach like? Is it bumpy at this point?
Absolutely, very bumpy. I'm moving up and down in the seat, as you can see my camera moving up and down as well. You're
doing a good job, though, I have to say.
Well, I'm working very hard to stabilize it, that's for sure. At this point, I'm thinking we may not make this approach.
Oh yeah, well, there's a lot going on, and actually the tower is going to come back right now and transmit us something else.
Shift 516, Westchester Tower, traffic 5 mile final, runway tree 4, line up and wait.
Line up and wait, 34, shift 5.
So as we fly over 95 here, we just heard that an aircraft is being put in position, and we are on a 5-mile final. So the tower has got 5 miles to get that aircraft off of the ground, and that's Port Chester, New York, as we continue along. And I guess you're still feeling the bumps as we're going.
Absolutely, there was no smooth ride coming down to that runway, so I'm hanging on over here, and most people are in the as well.
Are you thinking go around at all? Is that in your mind?
I'm thinking, I've been in this situation many times before, and this is the possibility that we would not be able to land in these gusty winds.
Well, I'll tell you this, I was listening to the tower and nobody else did a missed approach, but let's see what happens in the next transmission.
Westchester 516, wind is tree 1021, gust tree 0, traffic 3 mile, final runway tree 4, clear for takeoff.
Runway 34, clear for takeoff, Westchester 516.
Moxie 915, runway tree 4, clear to land.
Clear to land, Moxie 915.
All right, you're finally clear to land on runway 34. We're on a 3-mile final here as that aircraft gets takeoff clearance, and you can see downtown White Plains right over there. Here's the next transmission from the tower.
Westchester Tower, Kitchener 5, 2000, with me.
Share 950 Westchester Tower gains the losses of 1520 knots, reported on final, with the worst of it being at below 500 feet. Wind is 320 at 19er, gust tree 0, continue on approach, traffic may hold in position. Westchester 516, contact departure.
Go on departure, Westchester 516, adios.
Ciao.
A little bit of Italian and Spanish over there. All right, your aircraft is on final approach here, and she said the worst of it is around 500 feet and below. So tell me, what's going on here?
Well, again, I'm holding on as best I can to keep the camera stable so we get a good view of the landing. We're coming lower and lower. At this point, we're all set up to land, and we should be landing momentarily. But of course, that didn't really happen because of the tremendous gusts and downdrafts and perhaps even microbursts. I'm not really certain what was going on, but here we're coming closer and closer and closer to the end of the runway. So I'm thinking we're going to land at this point, and here's the end of the runway coming up, and we're going, and then all of a sudden, when we get, I guess we're almost halfway down that runway. The gear has not touched down at this point. You would have known that. We're crossing the cross runway, and all of a sudden, go around. We pick up speed, and we get out of Dodge. We're going around, unable to land.
915 going around, unstable.
Moxie 915, roger, flight runway heading, maintain 2000.
2000, Mach 915.
Well, isn't this exciting? I'm telling you, you are the first aircraft that actually did a go around on that night. So the next thing that needs to be done is you need to be resequenced back into the final approach course, and that will be done by a series of right-hand turns, keeping you over Connecticut, because if you were to turn to the left, you'd be interfering with a lot of the LaGuardia traffic, so that's definitely not going to happen.
Moxie 915, when able, turn right heading 090 and maintain 2000.
Right turn 090, 2000, Mach 915.
915, contact departure 20.8, he'll bring you back around.
For the re-vector, I'm going to provide you with just the ATC of the right pattern Moxie 915 was put in to try the approach again.
Moxie 915, 2000, 090.
Moxie 915, your approach Westchester, altimeter 2988.
98, Moxie.
Moxie 915, would you like to try the approach again?
Affirmative, Moxie 915.
Roger, and any wind shear that you could report?
We were plus 20, and then we floated it, and we got like halfway down the runway, so we had to go around.
Okay, thanks. And that was short funnel?
Yeah, we were over the runway and ground effect, and it just wouldn't come down, so we got too far down the runway, Mach 915. But yeah, short.
Okay, thanks. And Tower 988, that report was from an Airbus that came at 20. Moxie 915, maintain 180 knots.
For 180 now, Moxie 915.
Again. Moxie 915, turn right heading 180.
Right turn 180, Moxie 915.
Moxie 915, proceed direct to Tugme, cross at 2,000 feet, cleared RNAV Yankee runway 34 approach.
Go to Tugme, cross it at 2,000, and clear for RNAV 34, Moxie 915.
Moxie 915, contact Westchester Tower 118.57, good night.
1857, Mach 915, thanks.
All right, the aircraft is established once again on the final approach course to runway 34. We're looking at Rye Playland where those bright lights are. In a moment, the aircraft will be over the land, and this time, the aircraft, we all know, will land. I'm going to hand it over to Dad now to talk about this approach and also an interesting conversation that he had with the pilot after landing.
So here we are on our second approach. I don't know if it's really me or just the wind got better or I was holding the camera better, but it didn't seem to be quite as gusty and bumpy on that second approach. After we did land, and we landed perfectly well, I did speak to the co-pilot who was in the cockpit, And I said, what was our altitude when we went around? He told me we were 25 feet off of the runway, and the aircraft would not settle down. So this brings to the point the great skill of these pilots of this aircraft, Captain Ken and Dan. This is what they get paid for. They get paid for doing the best job possible, keeping people safe and reacting to ever-changing conditions. So kudos to Captain Ken and Dan for making this an interesting flight, an informative flight, and most of all, a very safe flight. This is what pilots are trained for, and they did a wonderful job. So my hats are off to them. And by the way, when we landed the second time, half of the passengers on the aircraft applauded the landing.
Yeah, that's actually quite rare in the United States. You do not hear people clapping very often. All right, well, we've done a lot of talking for this video. So for the remainder of this particular actual landing, we're going to turn the sound up a little bit higher and let you listen in to the sound of the engines all the way to touchdown on the ground. Enjoy.
Coming up to the field. Not quite as bumpy as the last. Let's see. Do it again. Get her down there. Still rather bumpy. Let's hope he touches down now. Runway. Did he make it? Let's hope so. Yeah, he should now. At the end of the runway. Yeah, he's down. He'll touch down now. Ken got us in on the second approach.
That's it, everyone. What a thrilling flight, and while many may not like it, I'll take a go around anytime. It leads to more flight time. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back again with many more videos just like this. So if you haven't done so already, I invite you to click on the subscribe button below, hit the bell button, hit the like button, and I'll see you all real soon. Thanks, everybody.